promised we'd be together, you, me, forever. Now there's nothing left to lose. And though I understand it's hard sometimes to make up your mind in these trying times, yeah, I just can't accept you leaving me when I'm overseas with the heart so heavy. Think that I deserve the truth for once, not a guilty tone, 'cause you're not alone, yeah. You said you wanna come home, but I know you don't. So this time I won't hear it on the phone. If you got something to say to me, then say it to my face. What it's all about, why you're bailing out. Think you owe me an apology. Just say it to my face. You're sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. Say it to my face. You're sorry.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Good morning and welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. It is Friday. It is February 18, 2022. Thank you so much for joining us. I am, as always, joined by Dr. Carl Mack. And this Friday, we are joined by Pastor Anthony Galloway. I'd like to bring both of them right into the conversation. Good morning, gentlemen. I hope the day is going well. It's early where you are. How goes the day?
Very well, very well. Brother Galloway, good morning. Brother Dixon, good morning to you. Happy Friday.
Good morning to all.
Good morning. I want us to begin this morning with COVID-19. Dr. Mack, you and I have had ongoing conversations about us following the science and what does getting back to normal look like? There's some updates from the CDC, as well as the possibility of moving the nation towards some sense of normalcy. But there's a lot of caution that has been given by experts. The CDC may join the COVID rollback, but there are experts who are weighing in saying that this is not the time. It is too soon to declare victory over the pandemic. As of February 16th, vaccinations were at 516,988 vaccinations on that single day, which is a feat to behold. 65% of the United States is fully vaccinated. 214.2 million Americans are fully vaccinated. On the flip side of that information, 2,212 deaths occurred on that same day. We are averaging somewhere around that amount of death every day. That's almost a 9/11 happening every day. But experts are saying that we may be seeing, light at the end of the tunnel. Let me begin with you, Pastor Galloway. Thank you for joining us. What are your thoughts about this juxtaposition between the quote unquote experts, also, political leaders? This is not just the doctors who are, this is mainly our political leaders who are pushing to move us towards some normalcy, but we do still have a staggering amount of death happening.
Well, it's interesting. As a leader of a church parish, right? One of the things that we are struggling with is the same thing. Folks are wanting to be done. They want to get back together. They want to grab a sense of that, and it's hard because we have to keep the numbers and the spread right in front of us, especially as before we were having this conversation. It was that as long as I'm vaccinated and boosted, then I have all the best protections out there and I can be relatively sure. But now we're moving towards something, treating this like the flu. And some countries have moved to that space and others haven't. Now, it's a very different story where I am. 98% of my congregation is fully vaccinated and boosted. And the other percentage that's there is made up a lot of young little kids who can't get vaccinated yet. So they're having a very different conversation than just a few blocks over and just a few counties over. And so, part of my wondering is there some places where that match that 65%, some match or some are much better than others. And there's this sense of trying to do that. However, we absolutely know that many in our congregation, even if when we open up, because the church has not yet voted to open up yet for in-person worship, so I'm just using that context just to say that I get the urge, and there's this general urge of trying to mitigate that. However, are we ready to move into a space where we treat this as a flu, especially given that Omicron has a cousin that is creeping out in many different parts of the country that is more contagious and possibly, as they continue to study it, possibly having more severe symptoms than Omicron.
Dr. Mack.
Yeah, I think, again, the more this thing mutates, and it appears now with this new strand that the pastor is talking about, I don't know what that's like, but ultimately, I think the fear, well, let me say, clearly the data is showing a downward trend. And, it's 2,000 deaths a day, horrific, absolutely. But in comparison to what was going on earlier, the data, the trends itself appears to show that we're coming out of this thing. And I think that becomes the very difficult question. What does fully coming out of this and looking like normalcy, what does that really look like? And I've been tasked with that question many times myself. And just as I followed the science when this thing started, I'm going to follow the science now, especially in light of being vaccinated, being boosted. Now, am I acting as though Superman, I got this protective shield around me and it cannot happen? No. But, I am, for the most part, treating it as I would a cold or flu, with the exception that, do I still mask up when I go? Yeah, I do. But is there a thought inside of me that I am as terrified of COVID as I once was, given the data? And the answer, quite frankly, is no, I am not. Not at this point, especially in light of the science and the data.
Yeah, I mean, for those of us who are vaccinated and boosted, And then there are those of us with complicated situations like you described, Pastor Galloway. You have families with smaller kids, much like myself. My youngest, 4 years old, he's not old enough to get vaccinated yet. And so, my household, we're still living in like full pandemic mode. 4 out of 5 on our side isn't enough. But there's that complicated mix of how do you proceed forward as a society when there's a vulnerable population who hasn't even been vaccinated yet?
Well, this is an important one for us in our congregation, in just that, we've got folks, we're overrepresented with the risk factors that become complicated, even if you're vaccinated and boosted. And so, and we were in a quandary for ourselves. We pulled our kids from school, as cases were going up in their school district in huge ways. And then my kids contracted COVID. They ended up being asymptomatic. My wife contracted COVID and was symptomatic. For some reason, I remain have tested negative consistently because I test regularly because of my engagement and with people as a pastor. And so I have never had COVID. And so, I was in the same household. I was doing the same things. And so, even we have as to Dr. Mack's point, have adjusted a little bit. However, we still have my grandmother who's vaccinated, boosted, fully protected, doing all the protocols she can. But if she gets COVID, even the less virulent Omicron strain, she's going to have major complications. And we even lost a major one of our leaders here in Minnesota, who has been on the ground. I know Sister Georgia, covered, his work, Brother Melvin, and he was, protected. So there's still this looming piece that is going to have us adjust to, as Dr. Mack alluded to, normal is not going to look like normal did before. Normal's still going to have to come with this level of protection. But quite frankly, we were trying to convince folks of this with the flu virus to get the flu vaccine even before COVID was here. And that same group of population is still at risk now, and we're still having to take that into account. And quite frankly, with new options, I don't think my older population is going to return to in-person worship anytime soon. I think they're going to remain online, just as an exemplar.
And Pastor Galloway and Ben, when we think about the definition of herd immunity, right? I'm literally looking at the definition now, and I'd like to read it to us and before I give this comparison. But it says herd immunity is resistant to the spread of an infectious disease within a population that is based on pre-existent immunity of a high proportion of individuals as a result of previous infections or vaccinations. And so in its quintessential meaning, that is exactly what we're looking at now. We're looking at the fact that a higher population who has had it or has been vaccinated, we have gotten to a higher population of us who have been vaccinated. There is a higher population of those of us who have had it. We've watched this thing mutate from a more deadly impact to one that is far more contagious, but not as deadly. So given that, a lot more of us have had it. A lot more of us have been treated for it. And so that begins to lessen the impact of it. And so the comparison I'll have is, what normal looks like. I think we all can remember in our lifetime when we would go to the airport, you could literally walk up to the gate. And after 9/11, that all changed. But now we've gotten used to that new normal where our loved ones used to literally be standing right there at the gate when we walk off the plane or when we board that plane. And now they're waiting at a security area, in which we can't breach. So that becomes our new normal. But have we adjusted to that? Does that seem normal now? Absolutely, it seems normal now. It's hard for me to remember when I used to be able to walk to the gate and greet my loved one as they boarded the plane or as they're coming off the plane. That seems so foreign to me because this has become our new.
Yeah, I mean, to both of your points, the new normal. Here's my question then, because the things that are being targeted by political leaders to get us back to their sense of normal are the very things that could exacerbate the pandemic even further. I'll give you specific examples. They're really pushing against mask mandates. Like, that's one of the main things they're trying to say is like, we should get rid of these mask mandates. Whereas I'm a firm believer that that needs to be a part of our new normal, because that's how we're going to keep these variants from popping up and setting us back. And then two, they're targeting vaccine mandates. Those are the things that would help us get to a new sense of normal. I'm fearful that they're targeting the very things that are going to keep us in this kind of state of survival where we're guessing what's next, because they're making a bad decision on the vaccine mandates and the mask mandates. From my perspective, I would love to hear from both of you, Pastor Galloway first.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting because it's shifting who's enforcing those things, right? So we will all continue to have a requirement for masking. We will continue to actually have proof of vaccination for participation in service. This is something that a lot of the areas, I think what I'm seeing is a shift. This shift is causing a predictability of where you're going to see these things. So in the metropolitan areas that I serve and live in, those cities are taking up the continuing requirement for masking. Restaurants are doing very similar. You're going to see who's going where, but it's also going to make predictable where we're going to see the proliferation of continued spread. And right now we have areas where vaccination rates are much different than not just the national average, but the city averages. And unfortunately, those are starting to follow political lines as well. And so I'm already hearing folks saying, I'm not going to certain places because nobody's wearing masks and nobody seems to be taking that seriously there, and I'm going to stay out of there. And so one of the interesting things I'm watching is starting to see how this begins to shape landscapes. The challenge that we have is a lot of the areas that are not continuing these, even though others may be relaxing, that aren't continuing these are also in areas in which there's not enough hospital coverage, at least in our state. And so the places that we see the spread going, not only amongst unvaccinated, but not keeping the mask mandate spaces, are the places where we're most concerned that there's not enough hospital coverage to treat the folks in those particular areas. So it's causing some different conversations to happen.
Yeah. And so Ben, to the point of vaccine mandates and mask mandates, again, Brother Ben and Pastor, when we all first talked about this, we were absolutely following the science and we were following what we were watching. And so if one is to believe that herd immunity is a realism from science, that, again, the more this thing mutates and maybe the less deadly it gets, the more our body builds up a natural kind of immunity to it. So if indeed these things are the case, and now we're watching for sure the death toll go down, the hospitalization goes down, the amount of people that are infected and having very serious complications. We're watching these things go down. So at that point, if I'm not seeing the type of devastation that we saw when COVID-19 hits, I am all in favor of people who say, look, you don't mandate this to me. I don't take flu shots. And if somebody demanded that I had to take a flu shot, I feel some kind of way about it. But now trust and believe, if there was a strand of flu that was coming out that had the level of devastation that I could clearly see all over this country, without question, I would do it. So to the pastor's point, I think that as we return to normalcy, you remove the mandates on vaccination, because so many of us have now gotten it. But now if you see an uptick in it, trust and believe, and there's a new vaccination that comes out, I'll be the first in line to do it. But at this point, given where we are now versus from whence we came and the science of it all, I'm in favor of removing the mask, making it, that's your choice at this point.
Are we looking at the same data? I'm over here squirming because I'm like, are we looking at the same data, Dr. Mack? I love you. Okay. Dwayne, put up the Johns Hopkins data again.
Sure.
The B-roll, because 2,300 deaths a day, that's not normal, man. That's a 9/11 every day.
But Ben, when that data rolls by, I want you to notice the graph. See, the trend is when you saying is the data showing that we're in a downward trajectory where we're coming off the highs of it. That's what the trend is. That's what tells you whether or not you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. When you watch that graph and the number of deaths start coming down. Now, again, I'm certainly not minimizing 2,000 plus deaths a day. See,
Hold it right there, Dwayne, right there.
But
slide it back just a little.
Let it roll. Because again, if we're talking about, look at that graph. You're on the downward side of that, right? And if that's what we're seeing, I'm okay, because it says that all the things that we did in the past to get through this pandemic, it has worked. Now, could it have worked more efficiently, better, if all of us had joined in at the very beginning? Absolutely. That's not the case. But based on what happened, the number of vaccines that people, the number of folks of us who were vaccinated, fully boosted, the number of us who were practicing social distancing, the number of us who were wearing masks, we're now seeing the trend go down. That's what I'm saying.
You know what? My problem here's my problem. Yeah. My problem is that my baseline, I've not moved my baseline from the beginning of the pandemic, because even at the beginning of the pandemic, we were shocked when we had our first day of 1,000 people who died on a single day. Yes, see, that's my point of reference. We were shocked when we crossed 100,000 dead. Yes. And what happens is a level of desensitization because of necessity. We have to absorb this new trauma so that we can have some sense of normal and go on about our life. But I see the graph and the trend going down, but I firmly believe at 2,300 or 2,200 deaths a day, this is not the time to take off a mask or a mask mandate, or to be, especially because of, look at the main target. The main target are our schools. Our schools are the ones that are being targeted to say, take off these masks from our kids' faces, and whatever the case may be for the vaccine mandates. This is a very precarious point. I don't think we're at an inflection point where we can smoothly sail out of this. And if we're telling people to take off their mask right now, we could be right back where we started.
Yeah, but that's the question that we started with you and Pastor Galloway. That's the question we started with. What does normal look like? At what point do we feel that we've gotten through this thing? Because to some degree, it's no different than the atrocities that have happened to us as a people through medicine and science, right? We're still traumatized by that to the point that we don't trust medicine and science to a large degree because of what happened in our past and because of the devastation that was COVID-19. There's a lot of us that may never, ever. So to Pastor Galloway's point, he had members of his congregation that may never return. So that's why the question comes, what does it look like? At what point do you say, okay, we got the all clear? I don't know that you will ever see something that says we have the all clear. There are people that will forever mask up going forward because of how traumatized and how devastated COVID-19 was when it hit. So that is my point. And at this time, we're certainly not seeing the level of devastation we did when COVID-19 was rampant.
But we are. We literally are. I love you, Dr. Mack, but we literally are seeing that 2,300 people dying a day. That's what we have not had a phase where we had a sustained level of 2,200 people dying a day at any phase. Like the volume of death has increased.
You have to show me that at the height, when Governor Cuomo was reporting from New York, you have to show me that at one point we were far beyond 2,300 deaths a day. We were way above that. I'm saying a day, Ben. So I'm going to put a pin there. I'm going to put a pin there because that's a point of clarification that we need to get before we can have a meaningful conversation past that. So, say that again. I've been asking you for that clarification for a while.
Man, you got the same Google I got. Ask your Google assistant over there. Hang on a second. And I got the data on the screen. I think the shock of it all. I tell you what.
Yeah.
Let's hold it here just because we got a long show to go before us, and I want to pivot backwards just one step. We did not begin this morning like we normally do, rooted and grounded in Black history, and I am excited about the Black history for today. Hey Google, what happened today in Black history?
On February 18, 1931, writer Chloe Anthony Wofford, better known as Toni Morrison, was born in Lorain, Ohio. A true literary great, Morrison is the first Black writer to win both the Pulitzer Prize and Nobel Prize. In 1988, Morrison won the coveted Pulitzer Prize for her fifth novel, Beloved, 1987. On October 7, 1993, Morrison became the first Black American to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Adapted from Black Heritage Day 4 calendar by author, lecturer, and civil rights activist Dr. Karl Mack.
I
ordered my
I'm
calendar
excited
yesterday.
about this one. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Pastor Galloway.
I was just saying, I ordered my calendar yesterday. I can't wait to get it physically in hand.
Yes.
But Brother Ben, I'm a blurred. Nice. I'm a blurred, and Toni Morrison is one of my patron saints in my Black nerddom. Just because between her and Octavia Butler, my science fiction in my fantasy and my Afrofuturist thought process. I mean, I still want to make a case that Beloved is an Afrofuturist piece of work out of 1987. But I'll leave that thesis for another day. Toni Morrison has been so groundbreaking. We would not have Black Panther. We wouldn't have had a lot of these modern writings if you didn't have her work kind of laying the foundation there. So I think it's apropos that we celebrate Toni Morrison today, not just for the contributions, but for the subject matter. I don't know that my aunts would be having the level of conversations and kind of self-actuating power if it wasn't for some book clubs that I got to listen in the other room to as they broke down Bluest Eye and its connections to their everyday lived experience. And so let alone calling attention to what's happening and even now in our schools amongst young Black girls who are on the receiving end of a very particular type of violent linguistic attack from their peers, outlined in Sula and the Bluest Eye. So I'm excited that we can celebrate Toni Morrison today.
Absolutely.
And Pastor, let me add to you one of the things that I love about the sister. The other thing that I want to mention is that she's an esteemed member of the sorority AKAs, right? But when I was doing, I am now working to conclude a Black History calendar that is 366 days of all Black women. And you can imagine trying to put each of those women on their day. And so Toni Morris played a part of that. And I'll tell you why, because when I came down, I had every day filled. I had one day left. The day that I had left was August 23rd. And for the life of me, I couldn't find anybody that was born, died, did anything. I just could not find anybody. And I come across this obscure piece of history about a Black woman named Anise. And in August 23rd, 1828, she killed her two enslaved children, took them to a pool of 3 other children, and she drowned them. And she was hung on that day. Right. And as I'm reading, I'm thinking, Carl, how would you put her in the, what justification are you going to use for that? And I started thinking about Toni Morrison's book, Beloved. So if you remember in the movie Beloved, there's a scene where the enslaved woman, mother, who is trying to escape with her enslaved children, as they're about to be caught, she takes a knife out and she kills one of the children. Right. Why did she kill the child? She killed the child, in the words of Frances Ellen Harper, there was a thing called infanticide, a mother's infanticide, which says that a mother would, in order to protect their children, the ultimate show of love is, I would rather kill my baby than allow my child to grow up in slavery. And Victor Hugo gives a quote that says, if a soul is left in the darkness, sins shall be committed. The crime is not he who committed the sin. The crime is he who caused the darkness. So in Toni Morrison's book, Beloved, she literally took that scene, not from Anise, but she took it from another enslaved woman named Margaret Garner.
Margaret Garner.
The point of it all is that Toni Morrison was able to tap inside of her blackness.
That's right.
and bring that out and give us thought processes to this. So it's no wonder to me that she became the first African American and one of the few people who could lay claim to two of the highest honors of distinction, both the Nobel Prize as well. So I'm just so honored, as you said, to celebrate the life and legacy of Toni Morrison today.
Yep. Absolutely. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll be on the clock. And also coming up at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be joined for Free 'em All Fridays, where we take a look into the political prisoners that come from the Black community. We'll be joined by Kalonji, Changa, and Professor Jerry Ball at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show after this.
And Pastor, thank you so much for your order of the calendar, and I look forward to your feedback.
Absolutely.
We are on the clock this Friday of February 18th, 2022. Georgia Ford is not with us this morning. She has been relentlessly giving us coverage of all of the things that are happening right there in the Twin Cities area. We are joined this morning by Pastor Anthony Galloway, who is from that very region. And then good morning again to Dr. Mack. I would like for us to begin with a partnership with ACT TV. They had coverage of Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, as they begin to launch a campaign for lower drug prices, lower pharmaceutical prices, and exploring why it is there's so much profit in an industry that is draining so much from people who need their medicine. It's a matter of life and death, quite literally. Here's a first clip from our partners at ACT TV of Elizabeth Warren discussing this campaign.
The average American spends more than $1,300 a year on prescription drugs, more than the citizens of any other developed nation in the world. And in fact, Americans pay nearly 4 times more on average for drugs than similar countries. 1 in 4 Americans struggles to afford their prescriptions, and 3 out of 10 adults did not take medications as prescribed last year due to the cost. That is shameful. No one should have to choose between affording a life-saving medication and putting food on the table or a roof over their head. Meanwhile, the drug companies do everything they can to keep prices high. They abuse our patent system to create an impenetrable shield around their drugs, which allows the drug companies to extend their monopolies for years and years after patents on the original invention expires. They use the same tricks to prevent generics and biosimilars from entering the market, dramatically limiting competition. And without competition, drug companies take advantage of their monopolies to set egregiously high prices, all while regulators just look the other way. In fact, more than 100 drugs saw price increases higher than inflation during 2021. Now, that's not because of any economic factors. It's because we've given drug companies free rein to engage in rampant price gouging right on the backs of consumers. And this has worked out great for drug companies. Drug companies are continuing to rake in record profits. Pfizer expects to pull in, I hope everybody's sitting down, expects to pull in an eye-popping $100 billion in revenues in 2022. And out of that revenue, they expect to make over $20 billion.
That was footage again from our partners at ACT TV. They launched, streamed this new campaign that is being launched by Social Security Works and Elizabeth Warren. We'll have a lot more information on that campaign as they continue it. But the conversation, Pastor Galloway, is so pertinent. I recall members of my dad's church who stopped taking their medicine their prescription because of the exorbitant prices, and making that decision at a certain point means accepting death. Like I've known people who literally stopped taking their medicine because it was so expensive, and then they died. I'm sure this is something that replicates itself across the country.
You know, it's funny. I remember a couple of church trips that were sacred growing up in my church community. It's only now, I'm now years old that I realized that those trips were not actually leisure trips. They were medical tourism. They were going to places where some of the medication that they had would be much, much cheaper. I was just in Panama doing some a mixture of family leisure and some humanitarian work, and I'm sitting there looking at a sign as we're testing to get back into the country, and there's a sign in there that right next to the sign that said, "You want a dental plan? Check out our dental plan that starts at $12.95 a year." And then I'm sitting there and I'm talking to some other folks, and there are folks from the United States that are in Panama to not just receive their care, but to they figure for the price that I would pay in the United States, I might as well take a trip in some sunshine and get my medication for cheap. So you know, and then to learn how much Latin America benefits from medical tourism as a function of the tourism that comes into the area, in particular in Panama.
Wow.
So I'm absolutely aware of this. The second point that comes to mind is the fact that as we do this, I have a very, very interesting tension in that for me, having a market-based health system in and of itself, or one that's driven by those seeking profit, is very non-Christian. And so
Yes,
I have a very specific moral problem with that piece as well. And one of the points that Senator Warren makes, right, there's a profitability to keeping prices high. So you can't even have a market system for those who believe in the market system space. You can't even use that to drive something that's more accessible to people. And you can't make patents or find other ways to do this. I'm now starting to think of I might need to install some of these trips in my own church so that some of my folks can get their medications.
Wow.
And you know, Pastor, and if we look at the other side of it, you know, what the pharmaceutical companies will tell us, which is, you know, to some degree very real, that there's a tremendous cost in trying to develop these drugs. And for every drug that finally gets through FDA, finally gets through the 3 trials of testing, there is a serious cost to that. And for that, I think we all agree. However, there comes a point when that drug that you made and the cost that you incurred to make it, you have recouped that cost.
That's right.
And so now, Pastor Galloway, to your point of when folks in that profession, you know, there's a medical oath that you take, and you should not, under any circumstances, now place a person in a position, as the quote that Victor Hugo just said, you know, if you place a soul into darkness, sins shall be committed. So in the case of that quote, that's what we're talking about. You had some people who said, yes, I need to take my medicine, but I can no longer afford it. So now they pull away from it. And so there comes a point with the pharmaceutical companies when you want to try to explain to us the amount of drugs that fail and your cost that went into all of those failures, and now you have to recoup your costs. There comes a point where we understand that, and we know that you have recouped that cost. But we also understand the other side of it is that you're now beholden to shareholders. You're now beholden to profits. You're now beholden to this capitalistic society in which there is one word to explain what it is that you are doing. And that word is greed. Greed to the point that you don't care. You no longer care about why you first wanted to create this drug to try to, quote unquote, help people. Now, that help means you absolutely want to gouge people because, you know, as the senator said, $100 billion. And from that, 20 billion of that, you know, I'm assuming that the last part of her statement was going to be the amount of profit that came out of that.
Right.
So even though they can explain to us the cost that goes into it, there comes a point after so many years that drug has been on the market, you have recouped your costs over and over and over again. That is clearly what it comes down to, just price gouging.
Absolutely. We'll be covering this as the campaign continues. This is not just a one-time thing. This is a push to get the cost of prescription drugs lowered across the country. I want to shift to what we were just speaking about off air, Pastor Galloway. The ongoing pandemics that existed, or rather the crises that were ongoing before COVID-19. This is something that is shocking to me because I honestly have to confess, I did not know this stat. Pollution, according to experts, kills at least 9 million people a year. Pollution, therefore, is responsible for more deaths than COVID-19. And this is on an annual basis. I'm sorry. I really feel like I've been in the know. I feel like I pay attention to the news, but I had no idea that the amount of death that was caused by pollution was so staggering. Pastor Galloway.
Well, this is you got to look at this both in a global sense and in the local sense. In the same place that we have this continued killing of unarmed Black men in this epidemic here in the Twin Cities area, now that we have just had to funeralize Amir Locke, we also have in that same area vastly different health outcomes pollutant-wise in the Minneapolis area, especially in the north side of Minneapolis. And so there's the global numbers, right? And we're looking at spaces, with, especially with high populations of folks in the denser pollutant areas, being as a part of this. But as you see on the screen, there's the water, there's a pollution of water, there's a pollution of air. There are the long-term effects of being exposed to small bits of dense metals over the course of time. And then we look at asthma rates and things like that amongst particularly communities who are connected to or near places of industry, which tend to be more affordable for folks who have higher risk. And so you see a combination of factors that are putting folks into extreme areas of exposure, even in the United States. So this continues to be an ongoing problem, and that it doesn't get as much attention as some of others that may seem a little bit more immediate, or that may kill in shorter amounts of time. You may have years of pollution before the effect becomes real, and then added to this number. So you also have the same lagging effect that I've heard you and other experts that have come onto your show talk about as well in this case.
Gentlemen, I'm reminded, and the two of you may be too young to remember this, but I remember way back when I was a child, and there was a commercial of a Native American brother, and they were showing folks throwing trash out, polluting Mother Earth. And all you could see is when he turns to the side, this tear come down.
Yeah.
Right. So even back then, we were understanding, as you were alluding to, Pastor, the long-term impacts of it. So when I was a child, they were talking about the need to protect Mother Earth. And again, as we get inside this capitalistic society, and get inside a point where folks don't think about it to that degree, the long-term impact of it, we're seeing this exasperate. As an engineer, I was a mechanical engineer in Seattle, and I worked in wastewater treatment. And trust and believe, when you start talking about urban planning, as you begin to get these cities and urban areas that now people are beginning to migrate to, and if the planning within those cities the infrastructure does not match it, you're going to have some very serious issues that will make this country look like a third world country. And what I'm speaking of in the case of wastewater treatment, if you have a wastewater treatment facility that is designated to handle only so many people, and all of a sudden you start getting this influx of population coming to that, and you haven't had the infrastructure to deal with it. Gentlemen, we all know that when you wake up in the morning, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to go to the restroom. At night, there's a certain time that trend when everybody flushes. And if that wastewater treatment facility can only handle so much, the rest of it is going to the nearest body of water. That means that you're going to have raw sewage that is going to be pumped. In this area I'm in now in Maryland, there's the Potomac River, and there's a wastewater treatment plant sitting right there on that river. If that treatment plant cannot handle the influx of raw sewage, and when I'm talking raw sewage, I think we all understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
It is going right into that river. And when I was in Seattle, there was Lake Washington, Elliott Bay, the likes. And they call it, they call these infrastructure systems combined sewer overflows, which means combined, meaning they're taking wastewater from our homes, from businesses, but combined also they're taking rainwater. So heaven forbid you have a storm and now everybody's flushing at the same time, and that system cannot handle it. It is simply going to run over into the nearest body of water. And then where do you think all of that's going to ultimately end up? So, our ability to address this issue of pollution and how devastating it is. There was a time in China where, the Chinese were wearing masks all the time because their pollution, once they understood the impact of coal or the benefits of coal without the devastating impact of air pollution. I mean, you couldn't even go to China and just walk around. And as we saw when COVID hit, one of the most graphic scenes I saw was when they had a shot from outer space of showing how the air quality in China cleared up because now all of a sudden that country shut down and Mother Earth was able to heal herself. So this is a very real problem that we need to draw more attention to and more education to. And so Brother Dixon and Pastor, I'm so glad that we're talking about it today.
Brother Ben,
absolutely.
I'm curious.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm curious, as you looked at the data, what is included in this 9 million? Just because I'm keenly aware that how pollution disrupts food supply spaces, right?
Yes.
So the garbage that we put in single-use plastics and things like that that are affecting the ecosystems are also having an effect in terms of hunger. And so I'm wondering if this report is only speaking to that which affects human body, directly in terms of those kinds of things, or if it also is inclusive of the hunger and famine things that are caused by our pollution as well.
I hope, and we'll dig into it a little deeper into the report that we got, the article from Reuters, but I certainly hope that means the number could potentially be higher if it's not all inclusive, which is just already staggering. One piece of information here with a parallel story, slightly different, is that there is a drought in the Western United States that is the worst that it has seen in 1,200 years. We'll have that information coming on your screen now, but just considering the condition of, there's a lot going on. I mean, we have droughts, we have wars, we have rumors of wars. Brother Matt, go ahead.
Let me put this out there too, from a Black perspective, right? I also want us to think about a lot of these factors, like, we remember the Erin Brockovich story, right? Where, she became a one-woman crusade against these companies that were manufacturing whatever it is they were manufacturing, but all of their waste product, they were dumping into the local rivers and local streams.
That's right.
And you can go inside,
chromium.
Right. So you can go down to the South right now and find a lot of these manufacturing facilities that they'll locate near Black communities. And the amount of pollution that is being dumped out to it, and then now members in our community catching cancers and all of this. And of course, these companies are absolutely saying that this has absolutely nothing to do with the way that we're running our business. So a lot of these companies that locate near our communities, especially in the South, and I remember seeing a story about it. Just forgive me that I cannot remember it. But the point of the matter that I'm saying is, this type of pollution, sometimes that, when they want to put these nasty manufacturing facilities in certain places, trust and believe they're heading right to places where we are. We congregate, and there is no watchdog to sit there and watch. And if there is a watchdog, they're bought off by the lobbyists. Congressional members are turning their head, even in the face of science that is showing that people in our communities are suffering at a devastating rate from this level of pollution. So we also have to be mindful of how these companies set their facilities up, especially throughout the South. And that's something that I'll look into. And Ben, if we circle around again with it, we can talk. I can be a little bit more detailed about that observation.
Absolutely. I want to circle to your side of the world, Pastor Galloway. Minnesota prosecutors have apparently backed away from their pursuit of a longer than usual sentence for the suburban Minneapolis police officer who says she was confused when she confused her handgun with her taser when she killed Dante Wright, the 20-year-old Black motorist. We're talking about Kim Porter, who was found guilty, and we are in the sentences portion of the trial. This is information we're getting from Georgia Ford, who was obviously there on the ground, and she's been covering it from beginning to end. Pastor Galloway, could you tell us, you're there. What is the feeling like on the ground? Because it's one thing after the other. I mean, we didn't get justice for George Floyd before we had Dante Wright, and we haven't gotten justice for Dante Wright. And then there's Amir Locke. Like, it's one thing after the other. How is the area doing?
Well, and let me add, we also had deaths of two young men at North High School on the north side of Minneapolis as well. And so there's a lot of combined grief and trauma. Look, on the sentencing side, and so that's what's taken some of the attention off of the sentencing that's happening now, let alone the other officers in the murder of George Floyd are taking a stand in the federal case. But Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison and Hennepin County Judge Regina Chu are looking to impose the presumptive sentence of 86 months or 7 years in the sentencing memo that they filed, at least on Tuesday. What the defense attorneys are trying to argue is that because of her apparent contrition, a very different tact than what Derek Chauvin put forward, she's said that she's probably going to apologize again to the family of Daunte Wright, and that plus the lack of priors has her attorneys pushing for a lower sentence than the average of 7 to 12. And so it looks to see how it goes. I know that as part of the court case, there's going to be, again, a look at the impact so that the judge may still the opportunity to weigh in and look at the family impact. It's the same process that we saw in the Chauvin sentencing. And so we're looking to see that. But again, a lot of this is overshadowed by some of the things that folks thought had moved the needle. We're in this epicenter and we thought that things had moved. Mayor Jacob Fry in Minneapolis, we thought had put forward something, and all the entire community literally thought that new policies had moved forward that ended no-knock warrants. And instead we have the city of St. Paul issuing a warrant, a general warrant for the search of a property, did not ask for a no-knock warrant. And then Minneapolis insisting on a no-knock warrant. And then serving and killing Amir Locke within seconds of opening the door with confusing commands. So we're it's hard to be able to focus on all of it, and it's only for the grace of God and the reporting of Georgia Fort that we are able to have a place to go back and keep these in perspective. And then look, I had to go to a school in Minneapolis the other day as part of the grief response. Because compounding to all of this is continued gun death that is happening, and in this case, two kids who many of the folks in the community knew who are exacerbating on this, and then the death of a longtime coach and community member in the area. You got to understand that in this area, everybody knows everybody because especially in comparison to places like Atlanta and Baltimore, it ain't small. Or it ain't large. So, the community impacts have a huge impact. And so those are just some of the things that are in the mix as we look at the sentencing that's going to happen today in the parliament.
And so, Pastor and Brother Ben, as I'm listening to it, I mean, to a degree, what we're talking about is let's show some compassion for this woman who made this mistake versus the level of accountability. And so what's going on through my mind right now is this system that we're in of this racial bias, we're now watching it play out again, because right there in Minnesota, I believe it was the judge who basically dismissed the fact that Black children should have been psychologically impacted by watching the murder of George Floyd. That we had. So there was no compassion there. This videotape being that we saw the other day, and Pastor, we saw the other day, of the Black kid and the white kid in the mall. There was no compassion for the Black kid as both the police officers quickly jumped on his back. No compassion there. So we're watching this play out over and over again. Now, let's go to the Olympics. Let's look at this little girl, this little Russian girl. Now what you're hearing in the media is, well, she's 15. It wasn't her fault. She didn't know. But then, Ben, Pastor, did you hear that level of compassion for our sister, Sha'Carri? So again, when I'm hearing that maybe we shouldn't throw the book at her of accountability, we need to show some compassion. America seems to never want to show us that level of compassion. But the moment that these folks do what they do, all of a sudden now let's forget accountability for a minute. Let's show that level of compassion. So, I don't get that. And in the case of a gun and a taser, I've been tased before when I was in Seattle. There is a distinct difference between the two. And so now when you take a look at what she did, is what she did similar to the way that those officers acted in that mall when they walked upon the Black boy and the white boy fighting? They quickly view one of them as the criminal and the other one as the victim. Is that the way that was her mindset?
Let me, Pastor Galloway, I want you to Well, first of all, thank you for joining us this morning. It's good to have you back. I know you've been, getting adjusted to the pastorate. You've been traveling and doing your studies. I want you to get the last word on this particular story, and then tell everyone how they can get up with you. And thanks so much again for joining us.
Just to underscore, Dr. Mack and Ben, Minnesota is the place where we are battling often for the second largest disparities between people of color and white folks across many different sectors, including education. When you look at our educational data for the same behaviors, Black children are referred to the office more. And so we see the underpinnings that don't just begin at these higher profiles. We're also the same state where law enforcement was able to apprehend a man who not only swung hammers and things like that towards police officers, but pinned an officer with the car and was still taken in alive. And yet we saw the egregious murder of Amir Locke. We see this on a regular basis. The same judge who presided over the Chauvin trial is the one who issued the no-knock warrant in the killing of Amir Locke. So we see, when they chant in the streets, the whole damn system is responsible. We see that absolutely on display, and it doesn't just start at these high-profile killing spaces. You see it all over the place. I can tell you stories from the Mall of America, the national, one of the national jewels here in Minnesota, and what was happening with the huge disparities for Black children and white children in that same space. Let alone the little girl in the who gets sent in the office in the classroom for standing up to a bully who's been silently and quietly microaggressing her to the point of explode, and gets none of the consequence for it. So we see this over and over again. And so there is absolutely amongst community here, no chill and no quarter that is given in this case, at least from Black communities, even though it's being called for others because of, quite frankly, what we call white girl tears. So go ahead.
I just love the way the pastor said there is no chill. I like that. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. No chill. Listen, we're going to go to a break. Pastor Galloway, thank you so much, man. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to having you on Fridays. We hope to have you back as soon as we can.
Ashe.
Love you, Black man. Stay safe.
We'll be back with more of the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show on the clock, like it or not, the whole thing after this.
Set my soul on fire.
Try and get grit, but it don't make sense. Cause you can lose life on this fast route. Yeah, turn thoughts to a cash cow. I might flip that to the glass house. I don't need the accolades, I'm in love with the chase. I just wanna eat, save a couple nights at the flat. To be real, couldn't see me making moves while I'm at. I'm still on the grind, limit time when I chat. I'm burning down sage, keep the demons away. When I write it, give a piece of myself to the page. I don't do it for the praise, love, that's just how I'm made.
Truth in the glass in the mirror. Yeah. Do it at me, old man, tryna pass in the fear. You're the first one to talk, but the last one to hear. Eyes blurry, but I couldn't see that, and he cleared down. Start to feel like I'm on one. Settle in, I'll be here for the long run. I'm a slave for the cash, got snakes in the grass, no brakes on the ad, but it's all fun. We done seen it all, heard it all. Heard enough, give me space before I murder y'all. 10 bad here, I'ma curve them all. 12 missed calls, and I still made a curtain call. Here to light it up, lighten up. Hear him talking, they ain't right enough, tighten up. Everything that I came for, I left with. I don't bang sets, I just bang on the set list. Going past supper when I came for the breakfast. Put me in your prayers, I might put you on the guest list. Young, to me reckless. Gold in my soul, got the same on my necklace. Light it up, light it up. Play and teach you something. Got my stones on Himalaya. No, I'm out your sucker ducking. Ain't no need for that discussion. Bluffing with the game. About to build a couple million. Came with nothing but my name. I'ma twist it, flip it, stick it like a bop it. Tell them stop it. All them haters out of pocket. Let me plug it like a socket, baby. Big on the set, what they said, part. So I skip straight ahead to the bread part. Top dog, I'm cool on the chick check. With the kid, know I got the gift paid. Big on the set, what they said, part. So I skip straight ahead to the bread part. Top dog, I'm cool on the chick check. With the kid, know I got the gift paid. Tell me, can you slide for a real one? Slide for me, slide for me. Can you slide for a real one? Slide for me, slide for me. Can you slide for a real one? Can you slide for baby, say I make her nervous. Maybe cause I'm real on the surface. Maybe cause I'm 10 down where the turf is. Don't get lost in those facades on the guys. You know ain't nobody perfect. I just put the work in. I know what my worth is. I'm living lavish. I'm flossing, bossing, and bagging up cash off the passion. Out here with my niggas, AV to the casket. We reckless, stay in your lane. I'm on gas till somebody cut the brakes. Cutting off these haters in the heads of the snakes. You're spinning the plan, but you catching on late. And she just sent the emoji, said she wetter than a lake. So I better not flake, take a break, say word. Hit me when you through with that, then we can shift again. My schedule been clear. These niggas see me, they mad like I'm one of their peers. I put that on Sita, so I'm sure it's abundantly clear.
Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Listen, it's not the same without DJ Exclusive saying the good morning. So I don't even think I should try Dr. Mac, but I'm going to say good morning to you. Welcome to Like It or Not, where we're free to tell the truth.
And we don't give a damn if you like it or not.
You know, I knew something was coming. I should have known it was going to be spectacular. Rebecca Azor is going to be joining us momentarily. And at 9:35, we'll be joined by Professor Jared Ball, Morgan State University, and Brother Kalonji Changa. And they're going to join us for Free 'em All Fridays, where we talk about freeing all of Black prisoners, people who are in prison for Black liberation. They will expound on that a bit more. In the meantime, Dr. Mac, there was a tweet that came across my timeline yesterday that I've been itching to talk about. It is the NYPD, the New York Police Department. They tweeted out an image of a sting. They seized and they do this from time to time. They would, line up all the cocaine or loan up all the weed or whatever, the weapons and the money that they confiscated. They'll do it and they'll put their mask on and they'll brag about what they seized. Well, in this image, they're bragging about seizing diapers, baby wipes, formula, body wash to the tune of $1,800. And I'm like, would y'all get a load of these losers? They tweeted out. Now they've deleted the tweet because obviously they jumped the shark here. I, for one, never really cared, even when they had marijuana laid up on the table. I'm like, y'all just messing up somebody getting high and eating some oatmeal cream pies and watching Half Baked. That's the only thing you stopped. But now they said, no, it's not enough for us to have these seizures over weed. We're coming to confiscate people. And the reason now, and let me, if there's any need to be fair to these people, it's because these items were shoplifted. And because these items were shoplifted and there was complaints of larceny, they did a sting. I don't know if it was a no-knock warrant. I don't know if they put on their tactical gear. I don't know if it was SEAL Team 6. But I can let the people of New York be rest assured that the violent offenders who stole diapers for their babies have been apprehended. And that's what your tax dollars are going to in the city and the state of New York. Dr. Mack.
well, just to give an idea of what the environment is, where this could have come from. I don't have any thing that I can base this on reporting wise, but living in New York and having just moved from the Bronx, when you're walking around, like whether it be Manhattan, whether it be Bronx, other boroughs too, you'll see people selling like on the side of the street, like on tables, a lot of household supplies. I'm not saying they shoplifted, but just in general, this is like small time stuff. And as much as it hurts business, it may hurt the business owner if you're going into like a bodega or a small shop rather than I'm not saying Dwayne Reed gets hurt by this stuff, because come on now, but the fact that they're bragging about this is not $18,000. This is not,
and the fact
this
that
is not 350. This is not 350 warrant closures. This is 23 warrants, 23 individuals.
23.
And if you divide $1,800 by 23 people,
come on, man. This is what the NYPD.
Let me pull up my calculator, because I didn't do that before, and I just want to get the math in real time here.
What is the 1,800 by those 23 warrants that they closed?
$78.
Oh my! You guys, they just took down people for $78 a piece.
I mean, come on, NYPD, come on. This is what you're putting your millions in budget toward?
Maybe it's perhaps now, Dr. Mack, I am not the most physically in shape. No. But I would like to challenge you on a sit-up challenge. That's a whole different conversation. I am going to be very careful in mocking these guys' weight, because I'm not in the best physical shape. But perhaps it's the case that these three guys on our screen who were, smiling behind their mask, maybe these were the only criminals they could keep up with. with their coffee in one hand and donut in another, it's kind of hard to catch the guys who are, on Wall Street fleecing America to the tune of trillions of dollars. You got to kind of run fast to catch those guys. But, the mom and pop shop, who may have lifted these diapers, they're easily accessible. What do you think, Dr. Mack?
Man, look, right now, you are Johnny Carson and I am your Ed McMahon. I could just only laugh. Man, look, you are doing a great job by yourself. Ben, I had no idea what you were going to show when you put the tweet up. But when I just looked at the photo itself, it just sent me into an absolute dizzy. So I have nothing to add to what you have so brilliantly said. Thank you so much for giving me my entertainment today. Ben Dixon, I haven't said this today, but I love you, black man.
It's got a little thing, Dr. Mack, with because if you look at the NYPD, if I'm not mistaken, they have like the ninth largest standing army in the world. I could have that off a little bit. Somebody could fact check me, but they got the money, they got the funding, they got the boots on the ground. They even have the Boston Technics, that dog, the cyber dog from Black Mirror. They have the cyber dog patrolling the streets of Harlem, and this is what they come up with.
Wait. So it's
Diapers.
Probably far worse than it's actually worse. The NYPD. This is according to Bloomberg.com. The NYPD budget rose by roughly $200 million for fiscal 2022 from the year before, pushing annual police spending to now. Elizabeth Warren was trying to make everyone sit down for that Pfizer number. This is one city's. This is not a state. This is one city's police budget.
Police department.
Yes, $5.1 billion for 5.1 in annual 2022 billion.
5.1 billion a year.
And just for what it's worth, because I did mention those tables on the sidewalk, this could be completely unrelated to any of those, and this could just be poor people needing basic household supplies.
That's right.
Ben, I'm gonna say this: the only thing that is going to absolutely seal this and make it even funnier is when Eric Adams gives his state of the city address. He puts this picture up to show just how effective the NYPD is.
Oh man, I can't. Eric Adams. That would be the only thing.
Oh, God, man, I tell you what, man, we need to do an SNL skit on this one. You and I could absolutely write it. We could produce it and perform it. And Ben, all they have to do is just replay everything that you and David said. That's it. Clip of the show. Oh, it's just hilarious.
Good brother, man. I want to move on, and I'm going to move on. But the truth of the matter is when you put something on social media, you mean that you're honestly proud of what you're putting out there. These folks in the NYPD, they are honestly proud that out of a $5.1 billion budget, they were able to seize these 23 warrants to the tune of $78 each, $1,800 worth of baby supply products. Good day's work, guys.
Hey, if we do the SNL skit, I volunteer to be the white cop just for humor's effort.
Who do you think I was gonna get? I don't trust too many other white people, man. Of course you're gonna be the white guy.
I can't with the two.
But I have to be able to wear one of those plastic glasses that have eyebrows and a nose attached to it.
Okay. You got a plausible deniability, witness protection. I get it.
I'm done with both of y'all. I hate both of y'all. Now, I don't love either one of y'all this morning. Y'all crazy.
Listen, I don't know if I'm. This next story is. Let's take a look at this one, David. We're looking at the Education Department is going to forgive $415 million in student debt. This is going to be applied to for-profit school debt. The United States in total has $1.86 trillion in student debt. So while the $415 million forgiveness is great, right? We can't just dismiss that. I am curious as to why this is targeting specifically the for-profit schools. I do understand that the for-profit schools present a unique problem in this country. I mean, they're everywhere, and students are getting in an extreme amount of debt, enrolling in not only regular schools, but in schools that are designed with the capitalist for-profit model. So I am curious if this is like kind of a handout to these specific corporations. We'll get more details on it, obviously. But the United States has an issue, $1.86 trillion in student debt. And if those students aren't getting a return on their investment, it kind of represents generational debt in the name of education. What do you think, Dr. Mack?
Well, Ben, you couldn't have said it any better. And so, David, if you could run the numbers on that, what is the cost of student loan debt, this 1.68 trillion or whatever that number was, versus what they're talking about forgiving. Just give me the percentage of what that is.
So this is from. So I'll give you what I have, at least from the CNBC article. Nearly 16,000 student loan borrowers who attended for-profit schools will get debts cleared. This is according to the U.S. Department of Education. It says the department remains committed to giving borrowers discharged when the evidence shows their college violated the law and standards. So this isn't just debt relief for the sake of giving the badly needed relief. They're really only focusing on legal violations by the for-profit institutions.
Yeah.
And see, trust and believe, that complete part of the story is what is needed, because, I can see the president standing up talking about student loan forgiveness and points to something like this, when in fact what you're doing is going after school for illegally giving the loans in the first place. But make no mistake, Ben, you said something that is very important. And, I want us to all be cognizant of this, is you look at people who think, there was a time when to go get a college degree meant something. That was truly an investment. And then once people got their college degrees, they said, well, I need a graduate degree. And you're finding people who have spent upwards of $100,000 for a college, for an advanced degree, a graduate degree, and get a job that 20 plus years later, they're still trying to pay off that loan. And they have asked the question, was it worth the investment? And this one young woman spoke, I so respected her answer. She said, look, make no mistake about it. The idea of getting a graduate degree and continuing my education, it feels good. And I'm glad I did it from that perspective. But from the return on investment perspective, was it worth it? No, 20 years later, I am still paying this loan off, and I still owe $60,000+. So when you start talking about that student loan debt, trust and believe. And again, just take a look at it, Ben, from this perspective. You got two college-educated people who have gone to college, and let's just talk undergrad. So you come from a family where you didn't have the resources, and so you took out student loans. By the time you finish just your undergrad degree, both of them could easily be upwards of $50,000, $60,000. And now these two decide to get married. So they're going to get married with $120,000 in debt. Not to mention now that they want to go and show off and have this big fancy wedding, that's another $20,000. Now they got to go get new cars and the apartment and all the other expenses. And that's why I say there is no romance without finance. When you meet a sister, or sisters, when you meet a brother, I need to look at the balance sheet. I need to know if there's financial infidelity going on here. What have you been spending your money on? Because now, if money is a major source of problems, look at how this country sets you up for that. And now they're doing it in the one area that should help this entire country, and that is the area of education. That's right. So student loan debt is a very serious issue, very serious issue.
And do you think about countries like Germany? Citizens of Germany can go to higher education for free, totally. Americans can go to Germany, and they can get the same education at a nominal cost. It's like extremely cheap, even if you're an outsider coming to Germany. There is just no question that what you just said was absolutely true, Dr. Mack. When we talk about education, every dollar invested into education is an investment into this country. It's an investment into our economy. And so it makes no logical sense for the United States of America to create a burden on the people when it's something that is an investment into the United States of America. It never made sense to me, except for the fact of the greed of the greed motive. The motive of here's an opportunity for investors to find new sources of revenue to hit their quarterly profit margins. And now we've converted even our education system from being a nonprofit endeavor to being a for-profit endeavor. And I promise you, every city that I've driven through in the South, I've been on a little bit of a tour, and every city that I've driven through in the South, I've seen at least 5 or 6 for-profit schools in those cities. And so now we're dealing with this influx of investors who are looking to make a profit off of you seeking to get an education. And it's an endemic problem.
But make no mistake about it. It's not only for-profit schools that have become big business. Not-for-profit schools, they are big business. They are absolutely big business. This is what it is. And so, when you take a look at a situation like this is a very complex and complicated situation, and there's no easy answers to it. But I will tell you this, if I had the world and I had to make my perfect world around education, understanding that we can all, we inherently know the value of education. And so if it was my world, if it was the Karl Mack world, teachers would be the highest paid professions in the country. Because if one wants to say that our most valued asset, our most valued resources are our children, then wouldn't it stand to be believed that you want to put the best qualified teachers in positions to educate them? So if it was my world, teachers would be the highest paid profession, which now means that I'm going to have the best teachers available.
That's right.
A lot of folks who could be phenomenal teachers will not go into that profession simply because it does not pay enough. And I certainly understand that. So if it was my world, that's the way I would do it. That'd be the highest paid profession there is that of teachers. And that way, when you see those dollars going into education, you will be able to see the return on our investment with a far more educated society. And of course, if we had a more educated society, crime is going to be down, industry is going to prosper. All of those things are going to happen. No different than when you go and you look at the best neighborhoods in this country. The best neighborhoods in this country, the highest valued neighborhoods are those neighborhoods that have the best schools. It is plain and simple. So, if I had that to do in my world, that's the way it would be. But unfortunately, it is a situation where nobody gives a damn about the education of children. It is about business, be those schools for profit or not for profit.
That's right. Dr. Mack, I'm one of those people who, I taught on and off for about 7 years. I've taught in extremely wealthy schools, public schools, and then I've taught in extremely poor neighborhoods. Shout out to all of my students in Jacksonville. They're all probably old and married by now. But what you said is so true. The amount of emotional labor that goes into being a teacher, the amount of preparation that goes into being a teacher. Like, if you've never been presented with waking 52 weeks worth of lesson plans and having it ready by the beginning of the year, then, you really wouldn't understand making that conscious decision. When I said to myself, the amount that's required of me as a teacher is not commensurate with the amount that they're paying me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I left.
Absolutely.
And I left. So, I want to hit one more story. This one is, and I definitely want, when Rebecca gets on, I want to talk to her about this one as well. This is R. Kelly. R. Kelly is hiring Bill Cosby's appellate attorney for his appeal. Obviously, we all know R. Kelly, who's been found guilty for his various transgressions. He is seeking appeal, and he is going after, or has obtained, rather, the attorney that was representing Bill Cosby. In terms of the machinations of the case and the appeals, like, this is normal. This is what every attorney, and this is what every defendant and every person who's been found guilty of anything has a right to an appeal. And they also have the right to get the very best attorney that they can possibly get. So I don't see anything alarming or wrong with this per se, but I do do still see an ongoing conversation in the Black community as it pertains to our fallen heroes, people who we admire. I have a picture of me and Bill Cosby when I was at Bethune-Cookman College at the time, but it's Bethune-Cookman University now. I was a Cosby scholar, and he came to our campus and he spoke for our graduation, for their graduation. And I was an undergrad, and I had an opportunity to take a picture with him. He helped me go to college for the first 2 years of my college career. That said, you know, I had to take a second look at someone who was not only a hero of mine growing up, watching The Cosby Show, Different World and all that, but also someone that was directly beneficial to me as a student. You know, just generally speaking, we don't have to speak about Kelly or Bill Cosby specifically, but what is it? It's a difficult thing to look at your former heroes and make the conscious decision to say, I can no longer admire them. If you're in the position to do that, and not everyone is going to make that decision, but I wonder if you ever had an occasion, Dr. Mack, where you had to look at someone that you used to admire and make the conscious decision that I'm no longer going to admire them.
You know, Ben, I think the quote that comes to mind when you speak of that is this: familiarity breeds contempt. And this is why, Ben, this is why they don't erect statues of people who are living. Because if you're living and we put a statue up and we go inside your closet and find out that you've done all sorts of nefarious things, then folks are embarrassed. That's why they don't give statues to the living. They do it to the dead, because at that point, we can glorify you and do these types of things. Now, when you stated that R. Kelly is looking to hire a better lawyer, first thing that came to mind is the NFL decided they wanted to go get a Black woman, Loretta Lynch, to go do their work. So, you know, everybody
chose violence this morning, Dr. Mack. He chose violence.
I'm just saying, you know, I get it. I absolutely get it. You know, now personally speaking, it's no different than, you know, I obviously had visions and thoughts of my family, you know, grandmother, grandfather. And when I sit around and listen to my mother and uncles talk about what grandma or granddaddy was doing on the side, you know, I'm just saying. So, you know.
Wait, not me.
Don't make me get into my dirty laundry.
Yeah, no, Dr. Mack. You don't have to throw yourself or your family under the bus to enhance the story.
Listen, I'm not throwing them under the bus, but you know, in reality is this. I don't care what family there is in the world. If you start pulling the layers back, it's amazing what you'll see. Case in point, who in their right mind would have ever thought that Bill and Melinda Gates would get divorced, right? And then when you begin to understand why they're getting divorced, and names like Jeffrey Epstein pops up in the conversation of why Melinda Gates decided to divorce Bill. You know, you would look at Bill and think, you know, is Bill, you know, that kind of freaky kind of guy, you know, but so you pull the onion back on anybody, any family, any household, you know, you're going to find things, but, you know, that's not to minimize what either Cosby or R. Kelly has done and what that impact has been. Because, you know, to your point, Ben, you know, even though we may be sickened by or disappointed in both of these individuals for what they did, the talent in which they showed and what, you know, what did Cosby mean to Black America? You know, I think we all can recognize the beauty of that. And you know, when we started, before we knew about what R. Kelly did, you know, you could never put on a song by R. Kelly and it wasn't a good song. You know, we all get that. And now that you begin to understand what, you know, some of the things they did, it's going to have an impact on you. And I think that's natural. I think it's normal. I think it's human.
Yeah. Yep. I want to bring our sister from another mister into the conversation. Rebecca Azor, Queen Azor. The Queen. Yes. My bad. You're right. The proper designation must be established. Rebecca Azor is in the house. Sister Rebecca, I don't know how much of the conversation you were able to pick up on, but we're talking about, you know, Cosby and R. Kelly. R. Kelly has hired Bill Cosby's attorney for his appeal. And we're just talking about like having to let go of our heroes. Like, you know, not everybody's doing that. But for me personally, when Bill Cosby, all those stories came out, I personally had him like, okay, hey, here's a hero of mine that I can't be a hero of anymore. Just, you know, I want you to weigh in on the conversation because R. Kelly thing it has never gone away. And I think it is appropriate that he's getting the kind of light shined on it that we all kind of were whispering about back in the 90s. We knew about this in the 90s.
Did we know about it in the 90s and we looked away?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? That was what we did in the 90s?
With Aaliyah.
That were ignored, yeah.
We all saw the relationship with Aaliyah, and and what can we look away? I was a child.
Oh, of R. Kelly. I thought you meant Cosby.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I've pivoted to R. Kelly because it's kind of the same. But with R. Kelly, yeah, like when he was dating Aaliyah, a lot of people were saying how inappropriate it was even then, and that was back in the 90s.
But it was almost, and I'll say this, and I'll leave it there because this ain't my business. But I really believe, like, in that time in the 90s, and this is not saying that it was okay, but this is just very telling it what was deemed almost acceptable around that time, 90s, late 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s. I used to see my friends getting picked up, and this is not okay. It was always confusing for me. But I used to see my friends in high school getting picked up by men of a certain age. And, that was their boyfriends. Those were like, they were like, 25-year-olds coming to pick up my friends in their vehicles during high school. And it was the parents consented to some of these. Some parents didn't even know their children were dating these men. And the fact that they were able to come on school campus is just crazy to me. I'm thinking about that. It's crazy. But, the culture at the time did not put big red stop signs or say this is a red flag or say this is problematic in that time. And I think that's where we come at a point where it's like, even in the Cosby time, I'm not making excuses for it, but I'm saying even in that time, drugs were done like nobody's business, okay? People were doing drugs. I don't know. I'm glad that these things are to the point where now we can say, hey, that's what happened then. It happened then, and it's still wrong today. And for anybody else that it may happen to, we can't just say, popped a Molly got her drunk and she ain't even know it, even though I like that song by Rick Ross. But these are the things that are very telling. The thing is, it was so acceptable in culture that we thought dropping the lines in music, dropping, lines in movies or, acting it out, it just seemed normal. But when we look at it, that just was a accepted culture. That was an accepted thing. And at the end of the day, when we look at it, that's very problematic that a lot of these young girls, a lot of these women, a lot of these things happened. When it comes to their effect on the culture, though, like when it comes to the music and showing us what it looks like to have families and to be smart and to be all of that, they did have that hold on us. They had us in a chokehold, okay? Now, R. Kelly had us in a chokehold. Every song was either written by, produced, or R. Kelly was singing on it. He had us in a chokehold. The new artists he was bringing out, and then he was working with OGs from the 60s, okay?
Isley Brothers.
You see what I'm saying? So, and then, so he has that. We can't say that he wasn't musically talented, but we also can't say now that we know that he didn't do what he did. You know what I'm saying? Also with the Cosby situation, we can't say that brother did not show us that we can have those kind of families and we can be smart and black and we can, be a part of the conversation when it comes to being, black and having money, right? And being a doctor and having kids who choose not to go to college and having, these were true families. These were actually a great representation of seeing black people, and Cosby did that for us. But we also can say what he did was wrong. We have to be able to say he did that, but this what he did was wrong. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. If you listen to R. Kelly in your bedroom or in your home or whatever the case may be, that's your business. I don't know. I'm not saying, because a lot of y'all still listen to Elvis, and it is what it is. I mean, that's none of my business.
Damn, Rebecca don't.
First of all,
she said, "I'm gonna lead the conversation, but I'm gonna slice your throat on the way out." God.
Well, first of all, Queen, let me say good morning to you, and you do look regal.
Well, thank you.
Queen, you look like you should have been right there in the movie Black Panther. You should have been right. You should have been the queen right there.
I feel like I could have. I feel like I could have been.
And so to your point of what you're saying, and I want people to also understand that not only do our culture have to deal with this, but many folks, go back to Roman Polanski, what he did, Woody Allen, Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
So you can go inside the entertainment industry or into the music industry in almost any culture. And if you peel the onion layers back and you begin to see some of the things that people are doing, a lot of folks are faced with, Queen, what you were discussing. So
yeah,
I'll leave it right there.
Well, we're going to expand the conversation with our brothers, Professor Jared Ball of Morgan State University, an HBCU, and not a problem. And we're also going to be joined by our brother Kalonji Changa. We're going to be discussing Free 'em All Fridays. We normally do it on the first Friday of each month, but we postponed it till today. And so I'm excited about them joining us. Rebecca, we also have this other story that's in the thing about Cleo. Somebody put that in there. I haven't had a chance to. There's some kind of documentary they're getting ready to do for Miss Cleo. We'll talk about it in the after
party. Why are you having
maybe.
trouble saying
Miss Cleo?
Yes, they're making a documentary about Miss Cleo. Yes.
A documentary about.
Is it evil? Is it evil? You feel like spirits is hitting you when you say Miss Cleo?
No, I don't. I was regretting bringing it up because we literally have like less than probably 2 minutes to even talk about it. I'm like, why did I bring it up?
Put that in there. Put that story in there.
Ben told me to try to see what stories we could talk about for a Friday. So I went to Shade Room to see what the headlines were like. And Miss Cleo documentary.
Can you imagine David over at the Shade Room?
Look, David, that was so white of you to pick the Miss Cleo. He's like, let's find out what we could do. But I love that you went to the Shade Room, though, because the Shade Room do be dropping stories. But I'm going to tell you one better. You know who drops the stories real good and has real good details? It don't be the Shade Room. It really be Baller Alert. Baller Alert will give you details. And they also have another page called Poly Alert, which is political.
I'm not going to put on blast why I went to Shade Room. I'm not going to do them like that.
Was he looking for? Okay.
Hey, it's probably me. I probably told him to go to the Shade Room.
I believe Ben probably told him to go to the Shade Room. You send that white man into uncharted territories.
No, I gotta give a shout out to Baller Alert. They're reporting.
Baller Alert is
Shade Room actually has where they do. Let me tell you something. It could be a story like this. Recently, something about the Super Bowl, right? They'll be like, on Sunday's Super Bowl, we had someone backstage saying they were bumped in the arm by Snoop Dogg. Let's take a listen on what this person had to say. Literally, they make that such a serious story, and they do it in the news voice, and they'll say, on TSR investigates. And I'm like, it's great, because the guy that does it is clearly a journalist, and what they did was put him in a position to, and then he'll do like, a hair store on 33rd Street in Chicago was robbed. And we want to see why they took 30 inches of hair instead of 20.
Oh my God.
It's like that.
Rebecca, but you know what? They're not that far off from the New York Post, who had to put front page Snoop smoking weed before the Super Bowl.
I saw that. That was so dumb. Yeah. That was so dumb. I'm like, Snoop smoking weed.
Yeah. Hey, okay, so check it out.
What the hell?
Let's talk about weed in the after party. Our guests are here and they're ready to jump on the screen. We always have an amazing time when it's Free 'em All Fridays, especially when we could spend time with Professor Jared Ball of Morgan State University and Brother Kalonji Changa. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure. We have Rebecca Zor on the screen and Dr. Carl Mack. How goes the day?
Man, y'all cutting up over here. Y'all just cutting up, man. I'm checking it out backstage. Y'all talking about Miss Cleo. Call me now. I'm listening to Dr. Carl Mack talk about how Rebecca is such a royal queen empress. I'm like, the song in my head was like Return of the Mac. I said, oh, I had to look and see my brother going in. Yeah, Baller Alert. I mean, man. I'm like, man, y'all too live for us. You know what I mean?
As the white guy that chose Miss Cleo story, I just got to say, I remember those infomercials.
Yes. The Cleo infomercials. David, we ain't talking about Cleo right here. Professor Ball, how you doing, man? Thank you so much.
I'm as good as could be expected.
How is it up?
No, it's a pleasure.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Oh, man. Listen, we got a lot of voices.
Much love to you both. Good morning to you.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good to see y'all again.
Let's jump right into it. let's jump right into it because, while we circle this show in joy, like we intentionally wrap it in laughter and music. One of the reasons we do that, Professor Ball, is because of the seriousness of the work that goes on when we talk about liberation, the liberation of not only Black people, but the liberation of all people across the globe. It's a pretty daunting task. And so here we are this Friday to talk about specifically our political prisoners. I yield the floor to you to bring attention to these issues.
Well, I mean, as we always like to remind everybody, one of the main reasons why we try to stay vigilant on this issue is that while people are continue to be politically imprisoned, that is imprisoned for their political activity and their ideas and their politics, organizational work, that we have to be reminded that is, to me, in and of itself, sign that that whatever advance or progress we want to claim has not really been achieved. If we have risen to a new level of political power and freedom and equality, et cetera, and so forth, then these people would be, again, not only freed, but returned home with parades, thank yous, and reparations and all other kinds of stuff. So in this case, I'm thinking specifically of, I'm wearing her shirt today, Assata Shakur, who remains in exile under the threat of a warrant in Cuba, and her former partner, Kamal Siddiqui, remains locked up here in the United States, having been arrested in 2003, I believe, and I'm sure Kalonji can check me on that if I'm off on that, for refusing to give Assata up. And he was then locked up with life plus, I think, 30 years. I think they added on to it. And charged falsely with an old cold case killing of a police officer that no one believes or could prove or has any evidence that he was involved with. He was only locked up specifically because, having been a father of a daughter with Assata, and wanting to not give her up in terms of her whereabouts or how they could track her down and rearrest her, he was himself arrested and thrown in prison and charged with this police killing. So we just wanted to come and talk a little bit about that. There's been a new effort to a letter writing campaign this past week on his behalf to try to get more attention on his case and get him freed, as is the case with people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, Veronza Bowers, and on and on. So anyway, that's so just lastly, is a lot of people, because this is a point Dhoruba bin Wahad has made, former political prisoner himself, that a lot of folks, younger folks wearing Assata Taught Me shirts, and who are not themselves following necessarily her politics, or the fact that her other comrade, Sundiata Acoli, remains locked up in prison, or that her former partner, Kamal Siddiqui, remains locked up in prison. In other words, it's not enough just to, if she is teaching us anything, then we need to be learning that we need to defend these other folks and appreciate the politics and ideas that they were working with and for which they're being punished.
Brother Changa, I want you to chime in there.
Yeah, I would like to just add on to what Dr. Ball was saying. When he mentioned a cold case, we're talking about a case from, I believe, 1973. You know what I mean? So we're talking about if not 73, it's somewhere along those lines. We're talking about, at that time, at least 31 years plus in regards to the alleged crime. And it is very important to know, because of the fact that many of the political prisoners that we work with and work on behalf of, they're prisoners because of the fact that in many cases they didn't turn on their comrades. You know what I mean? They didn't make any efforts to go along with the will of the state. And Kamal Siddiqui is one of those cases. I would like to also point out that the particular sentencing judge, he was sentenced here in Atlanta, and the judge, Stephanie Manis, she had a thing for revolutionaries. You know, she actually charged and sentenced Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown, just 3 years prior to sentencing Kamal Siddiqui, and she ended up transitioning in 2016, and may she rest in peace. But she was definitely a racist criminal, and I think that we have to remember our enemies as much as we remember our comrades and our heroes. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
So, brothers,
I want to.
Let me ask.
Yeah,
this
go
question,
ahead,
Professor Ball and Brother Changa. Given that many won't know the history and the details behind it of being a political prisoner, have you all thought about putting together a documentary to put this out so that folks can know more about what was happening? Because again, no one has to convince Black folk of the type of falsification that is going inside of police reports that have been used to convict us. And so if you all could, or somebody can put together a documentary that shows what the climate was like for Black folks. Again, many of us today, especially our young people today, don't even realize what the climate was like for Black folks during the Freedom Rise, let alone what it was like during the 70s. And now, of course, we're getting a very good understanding of how corrupt and how twisted that judicial system would be, where it can show compassion. Ben, we was just talking about the Karen who used the taser to kill this brother, and now they want to have compassion in her sentences, but let that be a Black person. In the case of Sister Shakira, life sentence. You want to come like that at them. So is there any efforts around doing a documentary and bringing out all the details and facts, so that we as a people can not only be more knowledgeable about it, but rally behind two steward brothers like yourselves who are keeping this in the forefront of our consciousness?
Well, a couple of things. One, there are a few out now, passing it on with Daruba Ben Wahad, kind of highlighting his life. It's an older piece in which he was, they pretty much monitored his case and interviewed him, and he ended up getting a court hearing, and he ended up being released while this film was being documented. He's a former political prisoner who was framed after he did 19 years. At first, he was a part of the Panther 21, and they tried to frame him on that particular case. And then 6 days later, they accused him of shooting a couple police officers. But, there's that. There's All Power to the People that kind of touches on some of that. And there's the FBI's war on Black America. I would also like to point out that we have a film that we've been working on for over 16 years called Organizing is the New Cool. And that's scheduled to be released this year. But aside from that, the good folks at Black Power Media, we have been talking about doing a more detailed, just to Dr. Mack's point, a more detailed and modern version of what's going on specifically around the case of political prisoners, because, Kamal Siddiqui is one of many. And it's an unfortunate thing because of the fact that you have several different organizations who specialize in quote unquote political prisoners, which is great. Problem is, none of us know all the political prisoner cases here in the United States, because there's some folks who haven't been declared political prisoners. And there's some folks, folks look at the Black Panther Party, they look at the Black Liberation Army, they look at SNCC and RAM and groups like that, and they acknowledge those particular political prisoners, but there are plenty of groups. I have folks who were a part of different formation, who have formations that were considered smaller than some of these other formations or lesser known, where they have comrades who have been locked up for 30 plus years themselves. I would also like to point to the case, if you all don't mind, of another brother here that was sentenced here in the Georgia area by the name of Veronza Bowers. Now, Veronza Bowers, when you talk about framings and such, he was accused of murdering a park ranger in 1973. And so what they did, the state did, is they got two informants who, federal informants, who decided to collaborate on on this particular case, and saying that, this happened, and they know that he did it, so on and so forth. But even their own relatives admitted that they were lying. You know what I'm saying? They weren't involved, and they got lesser sentences. In fact, one of them was paid $10,000. It was found out later on.
Wow.
Now, that's not even the worst. the situation is he maxed out his 31-year sentence in federal prison. He was scheduled to walk out of jail, out of prison on in June of 2005. So in June of 2005, he's scheduled to walk out. And as he went through his outtake and he gave people, all of his belongings and things of that nature. And just as he's about to walk out, they tell him that they have a hold on him. And this hold came from Alberto Gonzalez, who was the Attorney General at that particular time.
That's right.
Made no sense, the particular hold, and they said, it might take up to 60 days. Well, he's been in there since then. You know what I mean? So he served his full time, and it's 17 years later, and he still hasn't been released. Not only has it been 17 years later, the fact that Alberto Gonzalez, there's been 6 attorney generals since he's gone, including one black male attorney general, Eric Holder, and a black woman attorney general, Loretta Lynch, who the NFL has just hired to deal with their racial matters against Brian Flores. So, when you talk about black faces in high places, many of folks who we call our own or we claim, if we just get a black attorney general, we just get a black woman attorney general or a black woman vice president or whatever this case is, in the immortal words of Michael Jackson, they don't really care about us. You know what I'm saying?
And just very quickly, we got to remember also that this Gonzalez character is not only did he do this to Bowers, but he presided over the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein.
That's right.
So we got to remember to draw these distinctions as well. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So
let me ask this question. You said they haven't been labeled a political prisoner. How does that happen? Is it people that follow the case that says we're designating this person as a political prisoner? How does that happen?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, we got to keep in mind that America doesn't acknowledge, the United States doesn't acknowledge that they have political prisoners here in the United States. You know what I'm saying? Right. To them, they're deemed terrorists. And there are powerful institutions like the Fraternal Order of Police who pretty much was in bed with Gonzalez to make that particular case happen. Whenever you're accused of, quote unquote, murdering a police officer or anything towards a cop, you can run over a police dog. You're pretty much, you can guarantee that, that you're grass, you might as well get a green thumb. So, and when we talk about these agencies, none of us know first and foremost, everything in America is political. Everything in the United States is political. The way we talk, the way we walk, the way we dress, so on and so forth. The fact that we don't speak our native language was a result of politics, a result of war. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we have to keep in mind that there are folks who are into the environmental fight. There are folks who are into animal rights. There's folks into, all types of different fights and positions. But if you are causing a ruckus or you are pointing out the flaws and the kinks in this system and you're disrupting the money and you're interrupting power, then you become an enemy of the state. You know what I mean? Remember, like we talked about last time, when Mia Abu Jamal was snatched up because he was a journalist. He wasn't arrested because he was a murderer. But you have to. They look for these ways and loopholes to say, okay, boom, Ben Dixon, we got this piece right here where we heard him say, blah blah blah, and the next thing you know, 10 years later they call you, look. Rebecca, we know she's nutty as squirrel doodle. You know what I'm saying? She run around talking about Haiti. You know what I'm saying? We need you to say you saw her do such and such. And then you're like, man, I can't say that. Rebecca cool, whatever, so on and so forth. Then you gone. Then they go to Dr. Mack. They say, Dr. Mack, whatever. Man, she was a queen. She's an empress, so on and so forth. All good. But then they go to David. David like, look, man, I just got this new job in CNN.
No, honestly, I really think that we had this conversation yesterday on the show. We literally said, this show, right? It's what they do is they make white seem so right, but when it comes to dogs being abused, and I'm sorry to all my dog lovers out there, but a dog's life is so much more important than a Black person's life in America. I mean, they have organizations, they have movies about it, documentaries that will go number one about, saving the dogs. We got songs that we know, In the Eyes of an Angel. You know that commercial when I start singing that, because they embed it into our head.
Right.
And that, right. But when it comes to Black issues and stuff, they really try to halt it. They try to make it seem like it's too extreme. We're Black extremists just by saying, listen, Black Lives Matter. Oh no, it's Black extremists right here. We don't do that here. That's political conversations at the workplace. That's too political for us, right? But then white folks over here talking about all kinds of BS and how kneeling is, a disrespect to the flag. That's a conversation that still can be had in the workplace. When we're on social media discussing anything like this, we're probably us talking about Ms. Shakur's name is going to be flagged, where we can't even have this right here be put into the space of YouTube where that it can get monetized because we mentioned her name, because we mentioned other activists' names here. And the fact that we're challenging the system and calling these people political prisoners, and then talking about Black folks who are supposed to be assisting us in these spaces, but we're calling them out. It's very problematic. But when a white channel is doing the same thing, it just seems to come out correct and right. And it's more, like I was saying yesterday, it's more palatable for people because it's coming from a white person saying the same thing that we're saying. But it will be, if you're watching CNN, it will go right after CNN. For us, if you're watching us, they'll take you right over to Fox News. They'll take you right over to all these other things. And they'll say that because we said the word COON, we'll be blacklisted, we'll be shadow banned, for a while. You'll wonder why your content isn't being watched for this whole month, like it was in the previous
whole
month.
year in our case. Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
So there's a pattern here, just very quickly, that you're all pointing to. Like historically, one of my favorite books is Patricia Bradley's Propaganda and Slavery, where she points out that historically, the only time the so-called founding fathers and white colonists talked about slavery in the public was to propagandize their fellow white citizens to struggle against the British. In other words, slavery was only brought up in the context of what the British were doing to white citizens. And then nowadays, in a very similar context, we have even what is supposed to be a white alternative left media environment will only talk about political prisoners if they're talking about Julian Assange, or maybe the newer case with my man who was struggling with Chevron. I forgot his name.
Dollinger. Or
Donziger or something like that. Yeah. And both of them, of course, should be supported, but they should also be understood in the context of broader political imprisonment that should include the people that we're talking about here who never get discussed. So if you want Julian to be free, if you want Donziger to be free, then the same level of effort should be put to raising the fact that Leonard Peltier or Mumia or Kamal Siddiqui or many others are still not free. And then lastly, I just would want to remind that the issue is, of course, the ideas with which these people work. As much as Siddiqui and Sundiata Acoli and Assata Shakur are important as individuals, it's the ideas that they encouraged around socialism and Pan-Africanism and radical nationalism and redistribution that caused them and continue to cause us problems. And in fact, my favorite way of demonstrating that is, even if people will remember what then Governor Schwarzenegger said when he signed the death warrant to kill Stanley Tookie Williams. So this whole point about political imprisonment, this country does, to Kalonji's point, they don't acknowledge that political prisoners exist. They say that all of these people were convicted under the due process of the law. But as Schwarzenegger said in his statement about Stanley Tookie Williams, who had been convicted as a Crip and a gangster, but who had become a Nobel Prize nominee and had rehabilitated himself and was seen as someone who was of great value to humanity, Schwarzenegger said he must be put to death because in his book, That is Tukey Williams' book. He dedicated that book to people like Assata and George Jackson and Malcolm X, which from Schwarzenegger's point of view proved that he had not redeemed himself and was therefore unredeemable and deserving of death. So in other words, what they're saying is, if you engage in these ideas, regardless of what it is we think we can prove that you've done, you are to be targeted for assassination and punishment.
Amen. When white America stands up.
Your teacher your students have to absolutely love you. What an absolutely brilliant analysis. And thank you so much for that. Both you and Brother Changa. Thank you so much.
Well, somebody clip that and send that to my Canvas blackboard. Yeah, that's right. I'm just quoting Kalonji.
Nah, but on the real, I think we got to keep in mind too, whenever white folks in America stand up against tyranny and oppression, they're considered Minutemen and patriots and such. And when black folks do the same thing, then you are a terrorist. So we have to keep that in mind. And there's always two Americas, two U.S., two United States. And until we recognize and realize and accept that our position here, we were never brought here to be citizens. We were brought here as chattel slaves. We were brought here to be surplus workers. And until we recognize that, our citizenship literally is still 3/5 of a man. You know what I'm saying? That's how much of a citizen we are. We're 3/5. So if we, to Rebecca's point, imagine if we could rally and lobby to get the rights of canines. If we can get the rights that animals have. If we got that, we'll be a step or two ahead of where we are right now.
Wow.
Because you can't not feed your dog. You can't not make sure the dog is taken care of. You got to make sure the dog is on point. You know what I mean? And you cannot kill the dog. You know what I'm saying? But you can stand your ground against any black person you see fit because of the fact that you feel threatened.
I want to echo what you're saying there, brother. We're getting ready to, on the morning show, go into conversations with quite a few mothers who have not even gotten the first step in justice. And it's not from police killings anymore. It's not just police killings. We're dealing with an inundation. There's so many cases of parents who are having to get justice for their black child who was killed by just a random white person who was able to say they were standing their ground, and then the police didn't even investigate, didn't arrest anybody. Like it's repeating itself over and over again around the country. The nature of our blackness is being shined so brightly, juxtaposed to how they treat our blackness.
Hey, remember what Derek Bell, the late great law professor and co-founder of critical race theory that has been so maligned recently, remember what he said? He said, if you look at the public policy, just the public policy of the United States, it has the equivalent effect of taking hundreds of black people on a weekly basis out to a field and shooting them. That was his analysis. And just at the way food, healthcare, housing, stress, violence is distributed in this society, just being the public policy is set to the equivalent of killing hundreds of black people every week.
And Professor Ball, and Ben, to your point, in case folks want to think that what Brother Bell said didn't make sense, go back to the Ahmaud Arbery situation. Before that videotape was leaked, those who saw it, who had control of it, were doing absolutely nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. So those situations that we're talking about will absolutely exist unless we shine that light on it. Because when they have that power, and Ben, the same thing just happened in Mississippi, where we're talking about the FedEx driver, and he's reported that these two white men have shot at him. He's given the report to the local police, and now he's asking that his case be taken out of the hands of the local police and brought up on a state level, on a federal level, because, again, when it's just in their control, we've seen what they would do. And there are killings that have taken place all over this country. And if the information is not leaked, those who see the crime that's committed amongst themselves will absolutely protect the perpetrators for it.
Dr. Mack, I've gotten so many, up until till we got our own platform, till we established our own platform, we had gotten so many different emails and texts. I can, if you all can just look into my inbox and my emails, it's like I hate to even open my messages at times because of the fact that, places in Louisiana and in Tennessee and Connecticut and all over the country, you know what I'm saying? Texas, this is not a rare thing. You have so many cases of folks dating back for, I would say the last 10 years or so, you know what I mean? Since I've been, more active on the email tip, 15, 18 years or so. So many different cases, so many names and so many families that we've worked with that are still nameless because of the fact that we didn't have the wattage or the power to
that's right.
to share the information we have. So we're grateful for folks like you all, because of the fact that you didn't say that, look, well, they got their own thing going on over there, so we ain't gonna really rock with them like that, and we gonna act like they don't exist. Because there's a lot of
I am watching your numbers, though. Y'all got some pretty good numbers over there.
Hey, man, we ain't messing with you yet, but we coming. But on the real, man, it's some real suckers out there, and I'm gonna say it just like that because of the fact that, we will promote CNN, we will promote Fox. We will, as you all talked about earlier, we'll promote Baller Alert and we'll promote Shade Room and Drink Champs and all that type stuff. But when it comes to pure politics, we don't have no promo time. It's like what Malcolm said, we can go to war in Vietnam, but it comes to seeing little black boys and little black girls being bombed in the church in Alabama, we won't have no more blood.
Because what I mean? Honestly, talk bad about Drink Champs, though.
Yeah, look,
I'm cool with all.
Why would you mention Drink Champs? But at the same time, I honestly think what you're saying
but go ahead.
I like a good drink. But I honestly think what you're saying is a societal thing. It's the logic. It's how we've been brought up. If we start, even if it's black, it's considered too much when we start having to reach back just to tell the story. And in order for us to tell the story, we got to show y'all. Listen, this is what y'all ancestors did. Y'all being white people. This is what y'all ancestors did. This is what this country was built off of. I know they told you that I know you never knew probably because it just was considered to be too much to discuss this, but yet we can discuss other things that have happened in the world that have been a lot. But when it comes to the black story, the true black story in America, they do not want to have that conversation. For instance, what the Women of the Movement movie, right? It didn't even really, I don't even think it really scratched the surface as to how extreme that actually was, and it's actually a true story, but it was considered just too much for me to watch it myself. It was a lot because I already knew what was going to happen, but I watched it and I learned a little bit more. But the only people having the conversation online were black folks. White people couldn't even handle watching that story. It's available to you right here, but they're not going to watch it. The documents that are available all over the place for white folks, it's just not. It's just considered too much historically. And then
Rebecca. Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. No. I was going to say, for the most part, they know because they benefited off of it. But the thing is, that would draw into question the fact that they should be brought up on charges for receiving stolen goods because of the fact that they stole us. They stole kidnapping charges. They stole, resources from all over the planet. So in that sense, then, they've parlayed an empire off of thievery, rape, murder, so on and so forth. So it's not that they don't know. And we, unfortunately, we should be the first to blame because of the fact that you have black people that are afraid to speak about it. I've been to places where black folks, speaking at different universities, where they'll pull me to the side. Well, we have some white guests. Please don't talk about such and such. If you don't mind, you can just whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, bet. First soon as I get on stage, boom, white man, boom, 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 bang, 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 boom, boom, boom. They looking at me like, I just told this Negro, whatever. And I'm gonna point out, my man over here asked me not to speak about this.
Yes.
Hold on. Balagoon, you got the check from homeboy? Yeah, okay, good, let's go. So
Brother Changa, let me say this. So the first time that I was asked to speak at the National Society of Black Engineers National Conference, and it was being sponsored, the opening session was being sponsored by Dale. And of course, I'm president of the NAACP in Seattle. I'm raising hell all over the thing. First thing the folks from Dale said is, we need to get a copy of Brother Mac's speech so we can understand what he's talking about. And I said to the National Society of Black Engineers, you got a mission statement that speaks to your social consciousness. There ain't a damn thing that I'm giving you about what it is I'm going to say. And if Dale don't like it, you can take them platinum handcuffs and keep them on your ass, but don't bring that bullshit over here to me. That ain't what I do.
And so let me say this, though. The people who don't know that I'm talking about, there's a video, and these are people that I'm talking about, not the folks, because people my age and a little older, my age, I ain't old, I'm 31, but people my age and a little older, you should know. Now, there are kids out there. Yesterday, or a few days ago, there's a video that's going viral. These are the ones who I'm saying don't know, because CRT is not a big deal to them. And so much has been taken out. The little that we already had in the school system, so much has been taken out since then, because it's considered too much. There's this little girl who thinks they did a walkout, right? And she thinks she's saying something so important. Little white girl on the mic. She was saying, if it wasn't for or Martin Luther King, who abolished slavery. Facts.
Yes.
I can't make it up. This is an actual video.
Damn it, I have not seen
viral,
that.
And she is on. Yep, and she said if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, who abolished slavery, she's saying that with she took it from her shanana. She took it from deep down inside of her, and she believed that. And she was spreading this misinformation to people, and it was so sad because she thought she was saying something correct. And this is what I'm saying. It's important for even the little white kids, the little smart Generation Zers. They need to understand and know the stories, but their parents and the ones before them are thinking that it's too extreme. It's too much. So now what we're doing is banning books like The Bluest Eye and things like that. We're taking away things. We're taking away the little pieces of information that we already have. We're removing that, but we don't want them to know about anything. Everything is considered too critical when it comes to Black history or just Black people being a part of the story at all. So all they know is Martin Luther King. Why? Because that was something that was, again, white folks made palatable with the I have a dream and saying that white folks and Black folks will one day come together. That sounded good, but they don't want to talk about the rest of it. They don't want to talk about the rest of it. So
I have a friend.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. I
just wanted to say very quickly, just a point of clarification, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, the way the narrative has been told around critical race theory is not now, nor has it ever been taught in any way whatsoever in any school, certainly 12th grade or below. So even the claim that it has a specific definition. It has a specific approach. It is specific to race and the legal structure in particular. So it's not taught. So what they're upset about, to Rebecca's point, is anything that is critical of whiteness and white supremacy, and certainly critical of capitalism, is then deemed under this umbrella of critical race theory that is easily distilled and disseminated like any other marketing campaign, but has no basis in reality or fact or specificity. So I mean, it's anyways. That's all I wanted to just quickly point out.
And that's a whole lot to say, Professor. So thank you again. That's a whole lot to say.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and going a little bit overtime for us. We are going to do this at least once a month, free them all Fridays. I am keeping an eye on your numbers over there. Y'all are doing great work over there. Shout out to
we're looking to bring y'all on.
Likewise.
Yeah. Hey, let me know. I'll come in.
Y'all say that all that's so Black of you guys to do all the time y'all come here, because we be like, we gonna hang out. Just hit me up.
No.
All right. And we never ever
call me.
But on the real, I think that we should definitely do a mashup once a month. We can talk about that off air, but like a round table type thing.
Yeah,
definitely. Thank you. Thanks for having us on, and peace to you and your audience. We really appreciate it and the work that you're doing as well. So thanks a lot. Always.
No doubt.
Hey,
y'all be safe.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Take care, gentlemen.
Peace, everybody.
You too. Peace.
Rebecca, I was about to say Pastor Mac.
How about Sunday school dropout? How about that?
What's going on with the screen? It's a lot happening.
Hey, Queen.
Of all the titles.
Queen, I got to tell you, we might need a little bit more of you, because Ben and I, one moment Ben can have me crack it up where I can't keep it together. The next minute, we pulling out pillows. We got the big puffy boxing gloves on, and we got to get at it. So Queen, somewhere, I need you to be closer to us, right in between us, just like that. Because Ben's been misbehaving. I'm going to just tell you that right now.
Oh, you think I don't see Ben misbehaving? I always see Ben misbehaving. And then you too. Dr. Mac, I see when you be misbehaving too. I do. I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I watch it from the background when I'm not on the show and I'm like, here they go. And then you think Bubba's going to come and clean it up. Bubba joins in, puts on his best gloves. He puts on his best gloves and he joins right into that fight. Now, and then David will get in on it too. You would think he would be the referee. Now he in on the fight. All of y'all be doing a lot. But I love to see it. Now, I will say when I do come, I might do a little razzle-dazzle, a little sprinkle something in there of a little bit of,
a little razzle-dazzle.
But, and a little kiki, because that's what we need. We need a little kiki in the moment. But, I wanted to say shout out to my HBCU before Dr. Ball left, because
Oh, yeah.
The number one HBCU in the nation that actually showed me for the first time in my life, in my growing up black in a white suburban area, black and Haitian in a white suburban area, and the first place where I got that from, even though my HBCU teachers in the high school, they would secretly drop little gems in. That's why I went to Florida A&M University, and I learned, and I was really critical of how I was being taught early on, and I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that I unlearned a lot of that stuff. So it's okay to learn, and it's okay to unlearn as well. That's a whole. That's a great part of getting to know
Quinn, I just want to say, Ben, I absolutely enjoyed the dialogue with Professor Ball and Brother Changa. Just absolutely enriching. So thank you so much for having them on. Just very,
I love them. It made two light-skinned brothers looking white on the screen. Somebody had hair, though. Somebody else was looking like a thumb.
Why you say that about that man? He ain't even on the show.
Ben, right now, Queen is acting up. Now she misbehaving. I heard you, Queen.
You know what I mean?
Professor Ball gives me like a Montel, what is it? Montel
Williams.
Yes, he gives me that, but he's just light skinned.
So since Bubba's not here today, I'll take care of the super chats. Latif gave a $20 super chat and said happy 1-year anniversary to Black Power Media. So I don't know when that official 1-year anniversary for them was, but I think we missed it while they were still on screen. And I don't even think we knew this. So our audience is more on things than we are. But Georgia Fort is streaming the sentencing of Kim Potter on her YouTube channel, so people can check that out when we end.
Patch right into that, if possible. David, I know you have that set up. We'll bring that to you all. Georgia's doing that, and this is a good place as any.
Georgia for really holding it down with that coverage. She's been doing really, really good. Yesterday, she spoke with the family of Amir Locke, the mother of Amir Locke, with the attorney who's going to be representing them, which is Benjamin Crump. And she had a sit down with them. So if you guys even want to check that out after seeing what she's covering now, it's on her Twitter page. So she's been doing a really, really good job in this coverage, and I'm grateful for it because a lot of the information that I'm getting is directly from her.
From her, that's right.
I won't be able to stream today, but we can go. But y'all can go to YouTube.com/GeorgiaFort.
Yeah. We'll make sure everybody gets there. Yeah. Well, then, folks, it's been a great week. We've had a lot of great guests. We've had a lot of great hours. I'm going to give us 10 minutes back into the rest of our day.
I could do this for hours. So
there it is.
Talk to you for hours. All right, y'all. I'm out. It's Friday. I got to go. I am tired. Job is waiting for me. I'm thinking about taking the day off and going out to brunch, taking myself to brunch, going to get my nails done. I'm out of here, but I love you guys so much, mean it, and I'll see you on Tuesday because Monday, we off.
We off.
Love you guys.
Dr. Mac, appreciate your riding wing, man.
Love you, fam. Love you, Queen. Y'all be good.
Bye.
All right. We'll see everybody on Tuesday. Take care, everybody.
Don't take it personal. I ain't lying. I ain't hiding. I've been grinding, multiplying. I've been trying to get my weight up, staying prayed up, meditating and taking time away. Always posting up pictures, trying to look like you winning. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in. Yeah, you got the nerve to be on me. faking your life for the IG. If you got my number, don't add me, cause baby, I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. I'm on hiatus. Baby, don't check for me. Taking time out to be and live my life off screen. Taking time out to be and live my life. Hey. Taking just don't be and live my life. Don't take it personal. We just building. It's my season, lay foundation. Make a name for generations, please, and make a then take a break or a little vacation and chasing blues away. You always posting a pictures, trying to look like you